Today I'm going to be showing you how to solve a 2x2 Rubik's Cube. You can use whatever type you want. I use an Eastsheen just because the other brands, the basic brands like ice cubes and stuff, are terrible, I heard. So I got an Eastsheen 2x2. It was only $5, excuse me, and that was about $7 after tax and shipping and all that. So we're going to be learning the Ortega Method, which is a somewhat advanced method, but if you know how to solve a 3x3 using the Friedrich method or just know 2-look OLL, this will be easy for you. So first thing, let's mix it up. Okay, so the first step is to solve one side. It is optional to solve a whole layer. If you do that, you'll pretty much know your algorithms you'll be doing, so I will show you that in a minute. So I'm color neutral at this, so I'm going to be choosing whatever side I feel like. And for this, I usually look for a bar. If you have diagonals, like two white diagonals, we don't want to do that. It's easier if you just have a bar. So we'll go with the green side, and I solve on the bottom. So yeah. So this is basically intuitive. So if we want to bring this down to here, we can either go like that, or we can just move it down. Okay, and then for this other one, we bring it over here, and we can do one of two things. We can go like that, or what I typically do now is I move out of the way, bring the side up, move it back in, and bring it down. So if you're not familiar with the algorithms, I'll show you really fast. This is on 3x3 beginner method to put these in here. So if we have it where it needs to go down right here and it's right above it, we just do L prime, U prime, L, and it puts it in. Another example is when it's on the right side and you have to bring it down, it's R, U, R prime. Okay, and then there's one more case in which it's on the top and you need to bring it to the bottom. Just do R, U2, R prime, U prime, sorry, R, U, R prime. Now bring it in. So at full speed, you should be able to do this pretty fast. So if I wanted to do the blue side in this case, I can just do that, and I solved it just like that. Okay. So the next step, let me do the green side just so I can keep continuity with what I've been doing. So next step is to solve the top. Now there are a bunch of cases in which you can have, and I'm going to start from the beginning. Okay, so our first case is when we have on the bottom left corner on the top, so in this case we have green, the color we want, the opposite color, facing up, and to the right of that we have one facing us. So this is also called soon if you know 2-look OLL. And the algorithm to solve this is R, U, R prime, U, R, U2, R prime. The next case is the opposite, or the inverse, and this is how I'm actually showing you guys. I'm doing the sign soon and getting the anti-soon. So this is called anti-soon, and this is when we have the color we want in the top right, and we have the color on the bottom left facing us. So the algorithm to solve this is R, U2, R prime, U prime, R, U, prime, R prime. So the next case we have is called chameleon. This is because we have two of the color we need, they're opposite, and here's the body and here's the two eyes that are sideways. There's different names for it. So hold it so the left eye is facing you and that the body is on the right side. And we're going to do the algorithm R, U, R prime, U prime, R prime, F, R, F prime. The next case is the inverse of the chameleon, and this is called the bow tie. It's because we have two diagonal pieces and it is like a bow tie. So what you want to do, you want to flip it until you have the cross this way, so it's bottom left and top right, and you also have a piece on the facing your left on the back. And then we're going to perform F prime, R, U, R prime, U prime, R prime, F prime, R. The next case has its own inverse, and this is basically, it has several names. I don't really have a name for it, to be honest. This is basically the somewhat chameleon-like thing. So it has, once again, the body right here, except the eyes are facing forward instead of to the side. So this one is whatever you want to call it. So here's the algorithm. It's F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. The next algorithm is when you don't have any of the color you want on top. They're all on the bottom. And this case is when you have two, like on our last case, two facing away from you, and you have a chameleon eyes on the other side. So right here and right here. And the algorithm for this is the longest OLL algorithm. It's F, R, U, R prime, U prime, R prime, U prime, or RU, sorry, R prime, U prime, F. The final case is when you also have none on the top, and you basically have a parallel thing going on. This is when you have two adjacent ones facing you and two facing away from you. So hold it with either two facing you and perform the simple but yet annoying to me algorithm. R2, U2, R, U2, R2. Now that we've solved the top and bottom layers, we're going to do something called PBL, which is permuting both layers. It's not PLL, it's PBL, because we're doing both. So there are only 5 algorithms you have to learn for this, but there are 6 cases you must learn. So if I wanted to do this really fast, I would simply bam. First case is the easiest, but the one you'll least likely come across. This is when all you have are bars, and you need to diagonally place both layers. And this is the easiest algorithm. There are 2 ways to do this, and I find the second one easiest. Here's the first one, R2, F2, R2. And the second one is you do a full cube turn, an X prime, R2, U2, R2. I found that easier because R's and U's are easier. This case can be very tricky at first, and it did take me a while to figure this one out. It actually has 2 different cases in which you can do it. So, first one, if you look around the cube, you're going to see that you only have 1 bar of adjacent pieces connected. And there are 2 ways to do this. There will be a 2-turn step in this, no matter what you do. So we can either do it here, and you want to make sure that the bar is connected to one of the colors on the bottom. So this red bar is connected to the red on the bottom. We can also do a U2 and connect it right here. So if we do it in this position, the algorithm is R, U prime, R, F2, R prime, U prime, R. And then to finish the cube, we have to do a U2. But if we do not want to do that U2, well, to not do the U2, now we have purple instead. But we had it like this, where it creates a sort of backwards 7. To not do the U2 afterward, we have to do a U2 before, and then we have a regular 7, and then we do the algorithm R, U prime, R, F2, R prime, U prime, R prime. And then it solves it. The next case is sometimes very annoying, but you get it down eventually. So this is when you have a full side solved other than the top and bottom, and these 2 need to be switched. So hold this side towards you and do R2, U, R2, a full cube Y prime, U2, R2, U, R2. Okay. The next case is my slowest case, and this is when you have the entire bottom layer solved, and you have to switch just these 2. These 2 are in position, but you need to switch these 2. So hold it so that one solved corner is on your left and one unsolved is on the right, and do R, U prime, R prime, U prime, F2, U prime, R, U, R prime, D, R2. The final one is the most tricky algorithm in PBL. This is when you simply need to switch 2 adjacent sides. So hold it so those 2 sides are to the right, and on the top, and do this algorithm. R, U2, R prime, U prime, R, U2, L prime, U, R prime, U, L prime, or L. And that one is probably the hardest to me. Okay, so in this case here, if I look around the cube, I can see that I have two pairs, adjacent pairs, but they're not the same colors, so there's not really an algorithm for this. So what we want to do is line up the two bars and hold them in front of you and perform the algorithm that we learned for switching two entire sides when we have this whole side solved. And that is R2, U, R2, full cube, little y prime, U2, R2, U, R2. And then we just have to do another U2 to solve it. That case can get somewhat annoying because it's unnecessary, but that's a different case. I'm going to go over a few tips and strategies to help you improve your cubing time. So, these cubes are pretty easy to be color neutral and with just a little bit of practice. So, the first thing that will make things easier is to solve the entire first layer first. Not just the bottom side, but the first layer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on my own very fast. And so that's the whole first layer is solved. Now, if we solve the whole first layer, we will know that the algorithm we'll have to use for PBL is going to be one of two things, and typically it's the one where we just need to switch two adjacent edges. Sometimes it will be two diagonals, but most of the time two adjacent. So if we do our PLL, we can see that this case, it is where we need to do the two diagonals. So, and I'll do another case and I'll get the other one. Okay, so here we go. We've got this full bar here. If we do a U2, we just have to do our adjacent corner swap, and we solved it. Okay, I'm going to show you another tip really fast. Most of the tips that you need are when you first start the cube. So this tip will be on solving the bottom layer. So say we get the whole bottom layer solved, but we wanted that look ahead that we got with the full first layer solved. None of these cubes are adjacently matched. So if that's the case, this is the only possible case. If none of these line up and are none of the same, what you can do is do a U2 or an R2 back to R2, and that will solve the whole top thing. And then we proceed to this. We get our adjacent corner swap to place, and that cube's locking up and it solves. One final tip I'm going to give you is how to practice these algorithms, and this strategy works very well. So what you want to do, say we want to practice the first two OLLs we learned. Have the solved cube, and let's do the anti-soon algorithm. So R, U2, R prime, U prime, R, U prime, R. And the inverse of anti-soon is soon, so we get a soon. And now we can just practice the soon case and solve the cube. Now, of course, that's not practicing PBL, but it will practice OL. So, say we wanted to do, I don't know, that. We could practice our PBL as well. So we have a whole solved layer. And there we go. So I hope these tips really helped you, and basically just learn all the algorithms first, have the moves memorized, and then they will be in your muscle memory, because I don't even know them. They're in my muscle memory, and I have to use a cheat sheet to help me